chill bong. I have it's LA Kush. Do you
Okay.
know the LA Kush?
The brand?
Yeah.
I've seen it, not have had it, I must say.
Yeah, they're not in San Diego anymore, but like if I'm up in LA and I see them at a shop, I'll usually pick it up. And this is actually LA Honor, which is their brown box, which is maybe one of my favorite strains of all time. It's kind of similar to like a gelato, that kind of family.
Gelato's a very hot strain this year. Very interesting. The cultivation that I just went to, I don't know, what, a couple weeks ago, they had all gelato, like primarily growing gelato. And they're like, that's what the people want. And I'm like, oh, it's interesting. Interesting where they go with this. I'm like, let's bring back some like OG strains, like some Afghani would be great. Durban poison. I seem to like the strains that have that. I'm not a big runts person. That's also really big right now. Papaya strains, which I like in the rosins and the concentrate because it's so yummy when it comes out in that way. But also in flower. You know me, I'm a big white thorn rose fan. The flavors that come out of there, especially being a gassy person, the way that hits is so yummy. But anyways,
Mhm.
I am too smoking a gelato. It's a banana gelato pre-roll. This is from Elevate Air, and I think they're out of Maine. Correct me if I'm wrong. But cheers to our Friday. Welcome everybody. I've got Dina Nagib. Is that right? She just literally told me how to say this.
It's Nagib, but nobody gets it right, so it's totally fine.
We practice. We will practice. I'm just going to start calling you that so I can remember it. But this is Dina. I've had the pleasure of meeting her in person at the Beard Bros live event. I think it was earlier this year. And since then, I've just kind of followed her along on social media and really dig her energy and her presence in our space. So I thought I'd share her with you guys. So welcome, Miss Dina. Thank you for coming on and sharing your Friday with me.
Thanks for having me. I totally remember when we met at the Beard Bros live sesh. And it was such a beautiful event. And we were like hanging out and smoking. And then we both wanted to leave, but our cars were like far away. And so it was like the buddy system kind of situation. Yeah,
Smart,
I like coming in
smart
with
ladies. Yep, we got to do that, especially if you're in areas that you're not always in. I think that's something I personally have started being okay with going to events alone, but it's like depending on the parking structure or how that plays out for you or us, that there's always somebody that you walk out with. As far as walking in with, I've gotten comfortable walking in by myself now. I think there's enough people that I've networked with and build relationships with that they're going to be there in the space. Usually, if we're here in California, you usually run into each other. And so I think that's important that you do that, which you had mentioned in the brief bio that we asked you guys to fill out how important it is to have a woman's community and kind of put yourself around those type of women. So I love that we're aligned in that way. And I think we hit it off. We smoked a fatty together and then we were like, maybe we should smoke another one and then we'll go. Cause I think we tried leaving a couple times and we're like, maybe we'll smoke another one.
that sounds about right. And then I feel like the next time I ran into you was at the Hall of Flowers, the event at Sunstone Winery.
You're right. You're
And it was
right.
literally like I kept walking past you, and every time you like passed me the joint, and it just
I was
beautiful.
like, I know she won't turn this down. Yes, it's the best. It's like usually if I have my hands filled, that's how we're usually interacting in that way. It is such a blessing to be able and a privilege to be able to do this in our state that sometimes when I talk to people that are from different states that are still medicinal, that it really reminds me of like how much we're able to do here in California. So, with that said, let's dive into kind of who you are and what you've built. I always like to ask about people's morning routines. I know being healthy, wellness, The sober life is very, very big right now. A lot of people are trying to figure out ways to really just have a better way of living. Tell me a little bit about, I know you maybe do some yoga, and if like cannabis is part of that, because I'm realizing that some people only consume cannabis at night or maybe like once or twice a day versus someone like me. So, just having the diversity stories on here is interesting for me to find out. So tell us a little bit about kind of what wellness looks like for you.
Yeah, for sure. And that's one thing that I love about you, Casey, and that I've followed is like, your nutrition stuff and your fitness stuff. And like, I really appreciate that. And I think it goes hand in hand with cannabis. And yes, I do yoga. I also am a dancer. I've danced my entire life. And right now I do mostly hip hop. Um,
Hey, okay. Now, now
Girl,
I know it's
when you
gonna
come
be
to San
get you to
Diego,
the dance floor. A couple of these, I got you.
I'm taking you to a class. Yeah, no, and it's funny, and I could go on so many tangents about this, but talking about sober and like, I stopped drinking alcohol and I just never needed alcohol to get on the dance floor. So like when I
Mm.
stopped drinking, I could still, have fun and enjoy with cannabis. But yeah, definitely integrating cannabis into wellness and my exercise has been amazing. It definitely started with yoga and incorporating cannabis into my yoga practice,
Mhm.
which just like helps with relaxation and focus and was amazing. And it took me a little bit longer to bring it into my dance practice. I think, big crowd of people, like when you're not like as experienced of a cannabis user, you can sometimes have some like anxiety situations exacerbated. But yeah, once I started using cannabis with my dance, it just turned me into such a different dancer. And I have so much fun and I laugh at my mistakes. And yeah, I think it goes hand in hand for sure.
I feel like it would allow you to be a little bit more expressive because I think there's a lot of expression that comes at the art in dancing. I know for me, I always joke like I feel like I'm like Chris Brown, but when I review those videos, I'm like, oh, okay, maybe not exactly, but I'm feeling it. I love to dance. I've loved to dance since I was a younger girl. If my family parties, they have all the old videotapes. I'm aging myself. The VHSs where I was always dancing. It didn't matter. And because we're Filipino, I also had the karaoke by my side. So I love dancing. And to that point, yoga, I got familiar with Ganja yoga. Have you ever crossed that page? Very, very beginning of me even opening up about my cannabis use because it wasn't something that I talked about on social media until probably 5, maybe 6 years ago. So strange. And then it was really like trying to find a woman tribe, and then realizing like, okay, I'm not a typical woman. I woman that smokes cannabis, and then realizing like it's still very much taboo out there. But I found my people, and here I am now, almost 6 years into it, and I love doing what I'm doing. I love meeting women like you and just having organic relationships and different things to talk about. Not everybody's values are the same, is what I'm starting to realize in the industry. We may all love weed, but then those things are starting to come in play. And so I think it really shows the diversity in the cannabis industry, which I personally love. And that's what cannabis has always represented, is the diversity in people, because weed brings people from all over the world together. And I swear you meet all types of different people, like from walks of lives. You could have a conversation with like a 75-year-old about weed, and there's just there's so much story behind that. And you could have it with a 21-year-old who's just getting into it, and it's all the cultures, from cultures to demographic. So I personally love that yoga was kind of like the start for me as well, to see how people were using cannabis as far as wellness, because I was never into yoga, but definitely into mixed martial arts and weightlifting. And then obviously, if you follow me, I did bodybuilding, and I still had to hide it. So now that I'm seeing people talk about how they're using it, what kind of products they're using, because now we have the privilege of having all these different ways of consuming cannabis. So, is there a preference that you have that you alternate, let's say, versus your yoga and strength training? Do you like to dab? Do you take gummies preferably? Are you a beverage person? That's been pretty hot lately.
Yeah, I like all of the consumption methods. I'm not gonna lie. I'd say like, deep down, I'm a flower girl, but I love the beverages. I've been on the beverage train for many years now, and it's hard to find a good one. Like it's getting better in the shops, but I'll just use like one of the syrups, or like sometimes they'll call it
Mm.
like a water soluble tincture, and you can dose it exactly the way you want it. Some of them are even like, strain specific now. So, yeah, I think definitely for wellness, the beverages and the edibles, and even like, have you tried the sprays? Like, I got one of those sprays recently. I'm like,
Was it the Mood Holy Water collab? Yes. So that one, I was luckily given to that by the owners. He's a flower judge for Emerald Cup, and we saw each other at the judges mixer. And he's like, "I think you'll like this." Also, know the team at Mood Spray and how they've developed that. I think it's interesting because it says Dab Spray. Right? Is that the one that you have? I have not yet tried it. He did advise that if you're not a big edible person, that it really does slap. So, um, yeah, I'm gonna try it, but I haven't tried it yet. Did you try it already?
yeah, and they
Okay,
have
what's it like?
one that has CBG, CBD, and THC in it, and I love CBG, so that one is really good too.
That's from them.
For
It's
moods,
the same
yep.
ratio. Okay, okay, I like that they're playing with the ratios. I think that's really important right now, and CBG seems to be kind of a hot cannabinoid, is that correct? That people are looking into?
Yes,
Um
you got
So, yeah, I think it's interesting that when we talk about how it can help, even things with THCV and how that plays a role with insulin and helping people like, with obesity issues, whether that's genetically or what they may be going through now, or like pre-diabetic. So seeing like the scientists and the nurses in our field really take hone on educating some of the, physicians now that they may be in network with, because coming from the banking world, I know we would call them professionals, anybody that's an attorney, doctor, CPAs, anybody in the tax world. They have a network of people, their network of doctors, network of, whatever their professional expertise in. And the more we can get front of just one, that can open so many different doors to what we're trying to do in this space, as far as getting it in front of veterans to have safe access to this. Like, cut the fucking opioids out. Stop fucking wanting to write those little fucking. Okay, yeah, we're going on a tangent, but yes.
I can go there for sure. Like, I mean, we
Well,
were
actually, yeah. Part of Dina's journey was in pharmaceuticals, she had mentioned. And I was like, well, we love to talk to pharmaceutical people, or at least pick their brain out and see what their, views are on this. Because to my understanding, just diving into things like this, um, when you're in a particular field, they only teach certain things that they're allowed to. And then it's up to that person to either elevate their game in their expertise so that they're well-rounded and they're able to consult with people at whatever age and whatever question they may have. But if they're just kind of like, I just want that fucking paycheck, I think that's the problem we're facing. So let's dig into your background a little bit. Thank you for sharing a little bit about your wellness. I have so much passion for that, and I just want to keep encouraging people to move their body. I'm going to be 40 next year, and I no longer say like I'm just working out. It's like working out and making sure my nutrition is set up for longevity, and that's like my new word for the year. So cheers to that. We'll continue to keep smoking and moving our bodies. And of course, you guys got to do it to what benefits you and your body. Everybody likes to do it differently. I know my husband has been really enjoying runs, but he doesn't want to smoke before he runs. He just prefers to run and then come back And we all know there's a runner's high, so maybe he's just kind of using that as his like presetter. Who knows? And guys are different as well, to my understanding, as far as CB receptors and that. So, Dina, tell us a little bit about how you got familiar with the plant, specifically cannabis. And tell us a little bit your experience around that, if you remember it. I know I still remember my first time smoking. And then kind of like what got you to starting the Grass Goddess Consulting Company.
Yeah, so I've been a cannabis consumer pretty much my entire adult life. I think I was 17 when I first tried cannabis. It was like a guy that I was dating in high school, and then became pretty regular when I went to college. Definitely used it for anxiety, and never really, alcohol just never really suited me. But then I started working in pharmaceuticals my senior year of college, and started working full time right when I graduated. I worked for 11 years for this company. Yep. And it was a long time. And most of that time, I held the DEA controlled substance license for the company. So it's really interesting because I'm a cannabis consumer the entire time. The company obviously didn't know that. I'm in the closet holding this license that fortunately I was never drug tested for, but if they found that out, it probably would have been an issue. And so we did research while I worked in that company on pain, on the CB2 receptor, but we couldn't get any type of cannabis to do research because we had a Schedule II license. So everything going on with the rescheduling, and I'm very have strong opinions about. I will say that the company that I worked for, we worked on serious diseases. While I was there, we came up with 3 medications for cystic fibrosis. You're a mom, you probably know it's a genetic disease that when you're pregnant, they'll do testing. When I started working for the company, the life expectancy was 37 years for those people. Now, with the medications that we came up with, they can live a normal life. It's completely life-changing. So it's interesting because I have opinions about the pharmaceutical industry for sure. I have many opinions about opioids and how they are used. But I also know that pharmaceutical companies can do some amazing things. So anyways, that's just sort of my
That is fair. Yes. And that's what we're hoping for, is there are people that have good hearts and good intentions that are in these fields, and to be a voice. Because as a mom myself, my body is obviously important. Otherwise I can't serve my kids. But my kid, who is autistic, nonverbal, high functioning, they want to put those pills in my boy, and that kills me. It drives me nuts that they're so quick to want to give children these things. And we all know that so long that it's man-made, it's got to go through their liver. And there are some other things that longevity wise is going to affect them in the long run. And so thankfully, like I said, there's people like you, and maybe you still have connections in that field that you can constantly be feeding them, like, check this out, don't do this. And for private doctors, I think they have more leeway in doing certain things. I was just telling my other guests recently that I'm starting to see flyers and assets and maybe little displays of CBD options, not promoting it, not giving it to them, but kind of having it in display, as far as hey, if this is a route, because there's no doubt that, especially if you're living in California, that you're not coming across some sort of cannabis talk, some sort of news. It's out there. Sports athlete media is covering a lot of sports athletes talking about it, retired, not retired. So it's kind of in our face now. And I think it's our job to continue to have these type of conversations, so that hopefully it lands in the right rooms, and that we're able to continue doing the right jobs for the right reasons, I should say. But to that point, you had mentioned research, and in my recent digging in of, I think it was Dr. Huberman is what I'm think is his last name is. He's a scientist and he does a lot of myths. And it was a podcast that he brought another scientist on that focuses on cannabis research. And I think he was from Canada, but they were talking about even research that is for cannabis that comes from, let's say it's federally, oh, we're doing research, like a federal organization is approved to do research. They're also cultivating their own flower to
Mhm.
do the research on, meaning they're we know they ain't probably growing the best. They're not using high quality flower. That is such a disadvantage to the research. And that
Absolutely.
was mind blowing. And they're not like heavily in the cannabis industry. So to hear that from a scientist, and I think maybe a biochemist is what he was, very interesting. It is so fascinating to know this is why there's so much stigma. This is why we are in the position we are in. And so, yeah, very interesting. Is that, I mean, you could probably speak to that.
Absolutely. No. And I mean, that's the thing is like it has been so controlled to this very limited supply that is not comparable to anything that we're getting on the legal market. So yeah, it's frustrating. And that's like the only reason why the rescheduling news I'm happy about, because like it's still garbage. Like we need to deschedule, we need to decriminalize. Like we still have, so many problems with what's going on with cannabis federally. But we're going to get more research if we get all the way to Schedule 3. Like that's going to
Yeah.
happen. I mean, there's still a risk that it's going to be regulated in a way that's not going to be beneficial. But before we started the show, we were talking about, I just got back from Providence. There was this
Mm.
event for the Parabola Center, which is trying to prevent monopolies in the cannabis industry. And they were talking a lot about the things that are being done in Washington politically to get stuff moving. And so I am still optimistic that, I mean, I don't know if I'd say optimistic, but like maybe a little bit there. That we can still influence this and do it in a way that will be okay. But like, yeah, it's political and
So do you think reschedule is a way to go? Then hopefully they look at descheduling as the best way, or you're like, fuck rescheduling, we want the deschedule right off the bat. Like I see, because a lot of people say, but this is the step to descheduling. And I'm not very into politics enough to understand that. What I see, though, in observance of everything that goes on, I love you, YouTube. Do not censor me. Is that the government is always going to give us what we want so long they have the upper hand, and we may not see that. And that's my concern with this: is what's all on the table. And is it really going to be in our benefit? And I know farmers are not very fond of it. Anybody that comes from legacy is going to say, fuck that. Like, we want the deschedule. For me personally, as a mom, as a woman that enjoys home growing, I would like that to be descheduled as well. So I see that. But then, there's professionals that are CPAs and really don't see, they, like I said, they see this as a step and to take it as like a baby win and move forward. So I know that the cannabis industry is fucking torn on that. There's like a twofold to it, is what I feel. And we won't know till we continue to either get in front of these, people who have those decision making rights and, continue from there. But it is becoming a very political thing. And because it's a hot year, I feel like they will use the cannabis industry to as best as they can to get what they need for whatever side that may be. We won't get into that, but
Yeah.
it's a hot year for everything right now. You know, we've had hot things going on in the cannabis space, as you know. Lab testing, brands were called out. That too is fascinating. To me, I think personally, I had no idea that the labs, I guess I'm not surprised because in fitness and nutrition, they talk about this. You know, having all the stigma around red meat. I love red meat. Some people are completely vegan, would fucking kill me for that. But there was a lot of bad science out there, and I think that's the same fucking thing for cannabis. And unfortunately, you know, being able to make your own markers doesn't really help if there's no regulation or like consistency across the board. If I'm a brand and I think I'm doing my due diligence by sending it to a lab that I'm fucking paying for, I would hope that they're doing their due diligence, you know, to make sure they're within the whatever DCC regulations. And then now you have DCC that's like, oh, well, technically, um, and it becomes this like pointing finger. And my heart goes out to those brands because that's money out of their pocket, and their name is being now tainted because of the lack of what compliance regulation. You probably know, coming with a little bit of retail background working with dispensaries. Before we dive into that or maybe answer that, can you want to tell us a little bit of Grass Goddess Consulting and kind of like your background with that and kind of who you work with?
Absolutely. Yeah. So I started Grass Goddess Consulting just over a year ago, and I came over to the cannabis industry about 5 years ago. I worked for a couple of the point of sale companies that dispensaries use. So I worked for GrowFlow, and then I worked for ClickTrack, which is mostly up in Washington. And what I learned during that process is that dispensaries are really in a tough spot right now. The software companies have to redevelop the software for every state that they're going into. They're struggling to make money. And so none of the software is perfect. And the dispensaries then have to use that. So trying to bridge that gap and helping the dispensaries make the correct selection to begin with. So I partner with various point of sale companies, and then based on the client that I'm working with, what, you know, is going to be best for them. And then really working with them to set it up in the right way. A lot of these software companies are just trying to get them up and running, move them over, you know, get the next client on board. So just trying to like make that process a little bit more focused on the needs of the dispensary. So that's mostly what I've been doing.
That must be fun. And you probably hear all types of stories dealing with operators in the cannabis retail space. Very interesting. Did you come with a like software? Well, I guess you had said that there was a need for better software. And me personally, the software I see on the forefront, I don't see much because it's very plain Jane. However, I can tell you there's differences in a larger store versus a mom and pop store as far as what I'm able to purchase with. So it's very fascinating that we can be this far in the industry and there's still shops that are cash based only. And me being in San Bernardino County, that is very, very typical. It's very rare that you're going to get any sort of like a Medmen or Planet 13 style somewhere out here. And there is still very many what would you call it? Maybe temp license type functioning ones, a trap house type of vibe that, you know, you'll see for 6 months and then they'll just be completely gone. And they'll just, apparently they just go down the street. They get those like licenses and that's how they navigate around in the industry. But software is not something you think about. What are like some of, can you give some examples of maybe some issues that people are running into? Because for me, I think if you're an operator, you don't have the time to dig into the best software, the best resources, how, you know, like even to know how to get properly staffed. And I think this is where they get themselves in a lot of shit and have a lot of turnover at the same time, is not having that maybe structure so much infrastructure as they build the brand. They get the license, they open the store, they got the weed and they're running, and then everything else, then they start trying to figure it out, which I think bites them in the butt at the end. Coming from corporate banking, that's That's just how I'm observing it.
Yeah, absolutely. And if I can meet a client and start working with them as they're like setting everything up and get them set up in the right way, rather than having to come after they've like cobbled some stuff together and then it's not working. And that's, but it's also, it's fun. It's fun to come
Yeah.
up with the right solution, implement it, get them to a better place. I mean, some of the differences with the software really have to do with like the complexity. So, like how for like bigger operations, maybe multi-state operators, or if you have like 10 or more shops, like you might need a more complex software because you want to do things for, a bigger operation. But then for like a mom and pop, a smaller shop, that same software isn't necessarily going to be right. And you are going to just have like more confusion with the bud tenders. So that's sort of like kind of the first thing, is just really seeing like the scope of the operations and then which software is going to match that scope. And then, yeah, there's other things, and you can add in other software besides the point of sale as well. So if you want to get into like the loyalty program, the marketing, texting, like you mentioned, payments is a big thing as well. So, yeah, all of those things. Dispensaries have sort of different needs. Some of them don't want to touch the cashless payments at all. They just want to stay with cash. And so, yeah, it's different software that's going to be right for them. But ultimately, when they're trying to make the decision, they're just like, oh, this person's selling me the thing. It has my needs met. Like, let me just move forward. I have to make a decision. And they don't realize that once they make that decision, like, it's going to be so hard to switch.
Mhm.
So yeah, really, I think either having somebody on your team that understands it and has done the research, or bringing in someone like myself that, really spends the time, goes to the conferences, talks to the software companies, and has all the information to guide them through.
Yeah. Very interesting. I always refer everything back to banking because I spent 20 years of building my career on that. But, they had a referral system. There was and so in my brain, I see cannabis retail shops no different than a bank. There's a vault, there's a dollar amount that we're allowed to keep in the bank, FDIC insured per individual. It's very much like that. The bud tenders would be your tellers. And they're constantly in front of people. Obviously, money is money. Weed is not just weed. And so there's a difference there. So obviously making sure your bud tenders can easily, get the information they need from software. Cause sometimes I'll ask for something, and this is my home store. I won't put you all in blast, but they won't know off the top of their head, or they're reaching out by their microphone, asking someone in the back if they have it. And it can take maybe 10 minutes, or they'll go to the, computer, and they just seem to be either lost or not getting the answer they're looking for. So I can imagine that even the systems for the bud tenders to be, at least efficient in what they're doing, to be forefronting and providing service to your clients. The other thing that I think is interesting for retailers to hone in on would be the loyalty program, or some sort of program that I think I've talked to other people about that offer loyalty services. So, is knowing your demographic and audience and using that data to be built in, based on what your buyer should be putting on shelf. And I think that's fascinating if you really want to like dig into the marketing side of what software can do, because ultimately software is data. It's going to give you data, but not everybody has money for shit like that. And I think that's why they pull away from things like that, or maybe they had a bad experience. In talking to somebody that was running payroll, I know they were with Paychecks, and then Paychecks just pulled out and decided not to fucking run with cannabis brands anymore. I worked with them obviously as a partner, as resources that we would refer out to as a business officer for different banks that I've worked with. Same thing with merchant services for your point of sale systems. Who do you? So basically, let's say I'm retail owner and I have no idea where to outsource this, you would be the person that can help me put that together, or at least get that set up by putting us in connection with the proper companies is basically what you do, right?
Definitely, yeah. So, and I think loyalty is a great example. And in cannabis, I mean, probably similar with banking, you get a lot of personal information. So it's an easy thing that you can capitalize on. You're already getting that to, then use it to do, like you're saying, customer segmentation, and then, incentivize very specific to who your client is. So yeah, I partner with software companies that do those types of programs. Most of the point of sale companies will have like a standard loyalty program, and I can help my clients set that up. But I also partner with a loyalty consultant that really specializes on setting it up the best way for clients. So I think that's really cool too. How like specialized we can be in the industry. And I try to make those connections so that anything that my clients might bring up, I can be like, oh, hey, I know someone that can help you out with that. Even
Yeah.
if
I always say be an asset in the community, don't be a liability. And things like that is so huge that, you could rely on somebody that's within your network to refer you to somebody. And honestly, I think in this space, I think in any business space, that's how you move forward cohesively. And you're seeing a lot of that now in the cannabis space. A lot of brands that I know personally are starting to collab with their work, intertwine, their audiences, and it really trips up the algorithm. So for all of our marketing people, that's the way to go. Is you have to have, it's not just about meeting new people and building new relationships. It's also about nurturing your guys' relationships. And speaking on loyalty, I think that's a big deal, especially if they feel. I think loyalty programs build brand cultures, and in today's world, that's important because Nike wouldn't be Nike if they didn't have some sort of culture around that. And so, loyalty too. I mean, right now I can go to a store that is my home store and they have this I don't know if this is what you consider a loyalty program, but not everybody has this. It's like you get cash back. So for every dollar you spend, they have this thing. And sometimes they're like, hey, you have this so many dollars you want. I'm like, oh, damn, I had no idea. That was fun. I thought that was great to have. Um, Things like that I think is fun for retailers to implement, and then it makes the customer want to come back, because ultimately that's the deal, is you want them to come back and you want them to tell their neighbor and their next neighbor to go with you, and they'll also be the one to come back. And I always tell people, don't underestimate all the canna moms, all the women that smoke, because usually we're pretty heavy and consistent with our purchases. And I think that's fascinating if we pull data on the women purchasing, and how consistent it would be, because I know personally a couple moms that couple ounces every 2 weeks, no problem. Like, we are your number one fucking customers, FYI.
And I heard some data at a conference I was at recently that women also, share what they buy,
Yes.
or like buy products for other people. So that is an important aspect of it as well.
Yes, yes, definitely that. To that point, first of all, thank you for sharing all the experience you have. And, like I said, everything's going to be in our description if you guys want to reach out to her for her services, or maybe you're already have these services and you want to maybe take a look at it and see if it's even something that fits you guys. Because sometimes they do have these things and they aren't using it, or they're not using it correctly, or they don't know that they're paying for particular services and it's like a leaking faucet somewhere. And that's sad, but yeah, I think software is important in today's world. And then, like you said, being able to refer people out to trustworthy organizations, because it's hard to find people in the space that can actually service our retail operators, just because there's also a lot of restrictions and censorship around our space.
Absolutely.
It's a fun space, but it's definitely a hustler space. It's not for, I would say, the weak.
I do think you really have to be passionate about the plant. I was talking about something recently and I'm like, I have a lot of respect for people that fight for our industry that are not passionate about the plant because, like,
True.
it's hard. It's, yeah, not for the faint of heart, for sure.
Yeah, no, and software isn't, I always say compliance, regulation, anything that's related to the taxes isn't like the fun stuff that you hear in the cannabis space. Everyone's always talking about the product, the flower, the fucking concentrates, what's the hottest fucking pre-roll out there. But this is such important topics because this is how operators can learn. Operators can, share different stories as far as like how they're successful. It's just such a challenging space, and I know even getting licensing for a shop, especially here in California, is kind of impossible right now, as far as how oversaturated we are. But then I also hear a lot of shops going down and not able to fulfill a lot of things. Do you find that software comes in play for even the brands that are on shelf, because then they can see, right? Like, hey, people didn't really like that, and the buyer shouldn't. I think it's important that whoever is like a salesperson is also having that open communication with the store buyer and not just be so like salesy on, but why don't you just take this? If they see that their audience isn't buying it, but the buyer just keeps fucking buying it,
Yep.
who's gonna like regulate that? So there's got to be like some, like, who's gonna check that leaking faucet?
Totally. And it's such a big problem in the industry. I think there's like a few different reasons for what's going on, but like that brand retailer relationship is so important. But I think a lot because of like the history of our industry, a lot of like, buyers will just have like friends that work for brands and then they'll be like, oh, I'll buy that and then I'll put that on my shelf. And so, yeah, that's definitely, and having too much inventory and too many options and people, having to make tough decisions. And then, it's not good for anybody. But I do work with a few different software providers that have solutions for that. And I'm working with a client right now on implementing a connection between their brands and their point of sale system. And so then, yeah, they do have more of that open sharing of data, and then they can operate together better. But I agree with you 100% that like that relationship and that communication between the brand and the retailer ultimately needs to be enhanced. And that's how we're going to get to a better place.
Oh, yeah, 100%. So important to really nurture whichever level you're at, and, just be so adamant about providing your buyers and your bud tenders with as much like ammo to be able to provide, take your brand to the level that you want it to be. But it's all the behind the scenes and these little things that are not at the forefront of your head because it's all systematic. So, unless you come from a very systematic structure like banking or like your pharmaceutical background, then those things are a little bit more like keen to the eye, I would say. But if, let's say, you've always been fucking growing weed, that is not something that you think about. You know what I mean? So very interesting. I love what you're doing, as, so long that we are of service to our community. And like you said, are advocating for the plan and really helping these operators thrive in this space. You're always an asset, and I love that. So thank you, and I hope you continue to do that. We'll make sure that we put the Grass Goddess Consulting link in our description. Other than that, I know we have a very, very busy year. We have a couple big events coming up, one being the 20th anniversary of Emerald Cup. I personally see you at events, so I've got to ask, any hot events on the plan for the next, what are we almost past? Oh my God. We're like towards the end of the 6 months of this year.
Well, I'll definitely see you at Emerald Cup. Super excited for that. I'm actually having FOMO right now because the state fair is wrapping up and I didn't go. Did you go?
No, girl, I'm having FOMO with you right now. Oh, I guess we could hop in our little fucking cars and shoot up tomorrow for the award show, but
Should we
No,
do it? 'Cause I literally keep checking Southwest. I'm like, are they going to drop the flight price at some point?
girl. Okay, I don't know if you follow, but some of the people in our industry have been posting some of their deals with flights right now. It is sketch. Like, I don't want to be stuck anywhere. First of all, I got two little kids, 3 and 5. I am everything to them. Okay. And so, me being gone for that long, even my husband, he could only take them for so long. They still need mama. So, yeah, I don't know, girl. That's a very interesting, it's so weird. I'm like, "No, I don't wanna get stuck." So should you just drive? You're in Cali, right? You're San Diego?
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I just had like a horrible travel experience when I went to Providence, and it's crazy right now. And then they had that whole like tech issue, and so I think honestly, like that's part of it too. I'm like, I could pay, the whatever, but it's also just a risk that, and everybody's sick right now. I'm like, I'm just gonna watch
No.
all the stuff on Instagram and just vicariously through them.
Yeah, exactly. No, but I feel you definitely having FOMO about State Ward. Shout out to Embark and the Buddhist team. They did amazing with that. And I mean, like, yeah, FOMO for the simple fact of its history being made like right now. And I don't know, I've always been I'm born and raised Cali. So I'm like, I should be there, but I'm not. So it's okay. We have good people out there. Shout out to Beard Bros. They took home a W, and I can't remember who else, but shout out to you guys.
Yes. Oh my.
And I believe my captain from the Emerald Cup, founder Tim Blake, will be there as well presenting. So that's going to be very exciting. But yeah, get your guys' fucking tickets. We're about 3.5, no, 2.5 weeks out. Basically, yeah, you got to get your tickets. It's August 17th and 18th. I'm excited to see you. I think everybody looks forward to this event on a yearly basis. And it's just you get to be, because it even hits internationally, so you get to see people from all over the world. And usually you go to like different conferences, it's not the same vibe. Emerald Cup puts out a different vibe. Not only that, you get to be around all the amazing fucking farmers and people that are growing the amazing flower for us here, whether that's sun grown, mixed light, fucking indoor. They're right at your fingertips. Everybody's seshing. Everyone's bringing their like, check this out type of shit. It's just so fun. So I'm excited. They'll have panel speakers. I'm moderating this year. My first time moderating for their sessions, but it's going to be a fun category, which is, I think, content creator influencer. And if you're in marketing, that's a hot thing, especially in our space, because there's a lot of censorship, yet there's a lot of need for it. And so really trying to figure out the workarounds is important, and just having like really good, fun people up there. I think we'll have Jeff on there from Beard Bros and a couple different people. And then we have like the controversy topic where it may be getting a little heated. I'm sure descheduling will come up. I'm sure those fucking labs will come up. So don't miss it. It's going to be extremely fun. And then Sunday is where all the award show happens. And so I love to see people get dressed up too. I've done both, where I've gotten like super dressed up, heels, like fancy dress. And then the next year I went in like more comfortable, still cool. I call it my Lenny Kravitz vibe. It was like leather pants and like a leather t-shirt, but still pants, and like a fucking big ass hat, my fucking Pharrell hat.
Yes, I love that.
But
Oh my god, I can't wait.
yeah, it's a great time. I can't wait to see everybody, and I can't wait to see who wins, because that's going to be interesting. Well, obviously, I judge pre-rolls, so we know that, but we won't tell. You got to come. Before I let you go, we got my 7 grams, and it's around how you like smoking weed. Before I do that, can you just tell everybody where we can find you should we need your services, and maybe connect with you through socials?
Yeah, absolutely. So grassgoddessconsulting.com is the website. We're on LinkedIn, and then also Instagram at grass_goddess_consulting.
Beautiful. I'm
All right,
excited.
so I rip one for this final.
Yes, let's get prepared for our 7 grams. I always tell people one word, one answer, but in the cannabis space, there's no such thing. It comes with stories usually. But I love that people love it. So thank you guys all that comment on my episodes. It means the world to me when people get on there and just enjoy whether the guest said something or, they have a story that they resonated with. Whole idea is to be of value and hopefully, give you guys ways to navigate in our space and get to know the people that are good with good intentions behind their brands. So Dina's one of them, and I'm glad you joined me today. Thank you so much. It's a good way to start my Friday. I actually have not hit the gym, so after this will be a perfect segue since we're pre-gaming. Can't smoke too much. All right, 7 grams, rock wool or soil?
What was the first one?
I know your answer then. Rock wool or soil?
I don't even know what that means.
Rock wool, like what they're growing in, that's not soil. So they're like these little cubes. So you're a soil girl. No worries. I love fucking living soil and I love sun grown weeds. So long it's in the ground, I feel like the terps are expressed so much more. But people who have been doing indoor for a really long time and do living soil, fire. Shout out to Royal King Organics and surprise, they have some amazing flower. And I love that about us too, our relationship on Instagram. Anytime I'm posting anything about bomb ass flower or whatever the case I'm consuming, Dina's like, ooh, I'm gonna try that, or ooh, girl, I tried that. And that's what it's about. It's definitely about that. So when you had said that about the Randy Watson firm, I was like, yes. And that one, oh yeah, that one's flavor is like impeccable. Good job,
Oh
dunks.
my
Those
gosh.
dunks.
And I love sun-grown flower. I actually have some poet flower here that somebody just gave me yesterday. Yes, I have
Carbon fiber? Is it carbon fiber?
cherry chem.
Ooh,
Yeah.
from Poet.
It's poet, yeah.
Oh, shout out to Lorian. He's the
So
best.
yes, excited for that. So the thing is, I know nothing about cultivation. I'm like,
Oh,
when
that's okay.
people talk
That's
about
okay.
I'm like, nothing. But
Yeah, that's okay. I grew myself personally my own indoor, like my own little grow ops back fucking right out of high school. And then since then I just loved it. I've always grown in soil. But I also have grown in rock wool. So cool
okay.
experiences there. Very therapeutic, I must say. But I don't grow right now currently. Actually, I'm lying. I have 2 I'm lying. I have 2 little babies outside and I say that I'm not growing because they're struggling and I've never done outdoor. I've always done indoor tent, indoor rooms. Um, but somebody has given me the courage to try sun-grown weed in my little hot fucking 113 backyard. So we'll see how that goes. I'll have to send you a picture. It's like little babies. And I could tell by the stem growth already that they're not gonna be viable, I should say. But hey, they're out there. They're cute. I like looking at them personally. I'm like, hey, little babies. I talk to all my plants. They're in between my tomatoes and my squash. So I'm doing like what they would call guerrilla growing. And growing is like what they did in the mountains when they had to hide it underneath regular plants and it gives them shade at the same time. So I was like, "Oh my god, genius." So yeah, I have my little baby garden that's I'm trying to pretend to be a NorCal farmer right now in my little bed. Um okay, dispensary or plug? I think I know this one for you.
Dispensary.
Good answer, Dina. You'd be surprised. So many brands get on here that either work for them or have to have product out. I'll have to do a blooper on it, but so many pauses on that one and so funny. It's like don't forget what you're representing even though you may be an OG, like you still need dispensaries. Okay, floral or gasoline terps?
Gasoline.
Damn, everybody likes gasoline. I am a gassy person. I mean, I well, sometimes, but yes, I love me some gasoline. And then now, like I said, I've been playing with a lot of mixtures of floral and really trying to get even like a CBD CBG ratio to my mix. So that's really been fun. It's like the older you get, you're a little bit more conscious of what you want to do to your body, especially if we've been smoking for a long time. I think our body can use a little bit of those different cannabinoids than the fucking hard THC 24/7. So that's been fun. And I'm like you said, the drinks have been my new like just checking them out. Like, okay, before I'm like, nah, I'm good. I don't need that. And I think primarily it's flavors. The flavors, some of them were just so planty, or they tasted like a flat Sprite or some shit. And I'm like, what's going on here? Or no, I'm sorry, not a flat Sprite. You know, like when you go to a vending machine and they need to refill their soda, and it's
Yes.
like something's wrong with that thing. That's what some of them have tasted like. But I've had abstracts, or exit, yeah, I think Abstracts does it. The or ABX, Lagunitas, that one's pretty fire. And then Happy, I was really happy with Happy's grape drink. They gave me grapefruit and lime. I've yet to try that. They're not my preference in flavor, so for me, it's hard to give a review when I personally don't like those flavors. So my homegirl, she's trying it. She's like, I love grapefruit. I'm like, okay, you try this and tell me what you think. And it's always interesting when you give it to somebody who doesn't drink beverages often. They're still a smoker more. They're kind of like, but when it hits, I'm very surprised with it. I'm like, okay, that was a different vibe, but I liked it. So you're right. I'm very into those right now. And the syrups for sure. I think syrups, you got to be careful because I think like Space Gems has a pretty strong, like I would call it my sis syrup. um, it's like fucking codeine. Like you have to, I think it's like 600 milligrams per serving. I mean, I know some people want that, but that's something you'd have to like really blend and ratio out because it'll fuck you up. I would say those are for people who have major, like maybe trying to get off some opioid that they need for pain. That would be like ideal. All right.
Yeah,
Bump.
no, drinks for medical things are, I think, amazing because you can get that dosage exactly what you want it to be, and they're fast acting. So yeah, if you don't want to smoke or vape, I think it's probably
Dosing.
the next best. Yeah.
Yeah, I think you mentioned that earlier, and I meant to go back to that. But yeah, dosing's a big deal right now because even people, I've watched some TED Talk and they're talking about dosing not even being close to being right with tinctures because even like the fucking whatever you call those things, and doctors here versus like study volume versus milligrams, and those two don't even make fucking sense. And that thing only, it's great. I have like notebooks. I get so lit and I go into these TED Talks or YouTube videos on what people are saying that are not in the cannabis industry or like professionally like speakers out there on medicine. And it's so interesting to see the science that they've done or even talk about like what doctors study when it comes to dosing. And that's a whole different subject. And I'm sure you know from pharmaceuticals how that plays out. That's a different subject. We'll have to get on that.
Yep. Spinoff.
But dosing, yes, tinctures, you're right. I think that's the easiest way. And same thing with drinks, because I didn't have to drink the whole can. I could have done half. Um,
Yep.
but I think that's why maybe syrups are better for dosing because then you could play with that rather than a can, a beverage. Now that I'm like running it through my brain, we'll have to have a taste testing day. That would be fun. So for all you brands who have beverages, make sure you guys send me and Dina some drinks. We would like to try them. Our links will be in our bios. Papers or leaves?
Leaves. I've always been like I loved rolling blunts in college. That was my thing, and yeah, so for sure.
When I open this, I'm going to save it till I'm with you. So the guest I had earlier today, she is preparing to really launch these tobacco organic like natural leaves, and it's like this big huge piece, and you could like roll it as you want, so it's like high quality. It's not like a backwoods or anything like that. And I'm like, okay, I love me a good blunt, and if it's like crafted tobacco leaf, like I'm gonna try this. I'll save it for our Emerald Cup sesh.
Okay, I'm down.
Deal. She also sent me some flowers, so if I'm not flying, I bring that too. Okay. Live resin or rosin?
Rosin. Definitely
That's a big hot button too in the industry.
whole plant, as much as possible. Try to avoid, chemicals. It's my opinion.
Yeah, I know. That's what I thought. So there's so much science to it. And I had Beard Bros on here and they chose resin. And being in the Emerald Cup, you get to be around people who are cultivating and who have been doing this for a really long time. And they too gave me some not lectures, but some educational feedback on live resin. And it's so fascinating how, let's say, two people who are completely well-rounded in cultivating and in extraction will say the completely opposite thing. I'm like, so is this a preference? But then this one person, I can't say any names because everyone will just know. But this one person does it all. Like they're able to do rosin, they're able to do live resin. So it's not like they have a preference of like, no, this is the way to fucking do it. They know how to do both and they equally push out amazing product. So it's fascinating for me to hear somebody say no, um no, we only like rosin and they're cultivators because we know that we're getting pure cannabis plant, like not cannabis matter or cannabis whatever. But then the resin side will say they're getting the full spectrum of the plant. So I'm like, those are the vocabulary, the words that they're using are like, you guys are tripping me out. So now it's coming to, well, I'm gonna have to try myself which one I prefer. So now it's like live resin brands. Let's bring it on. Let's try it. But personally, when I shop, I am a rosin. Like I've just catered to that, I guess. So yeah, it's very interesting what our industry makers are doing or extractors. It's a hot subject right now.
I feel like so many edible brands are turning to solventless live rosin. That's like the thing
Yes.
now.
You know what? And I think it makes a difference in flavor, to be honest. To be
Okay.
honest.
Yeah, I
I
think
don't
so.
know. We'll have to see. Like I said, taste testing time. All
Oh,
right. Last but not least, Cheech and Chong or Pineapple Express.
oh,
I switched
pineapple
it up on you.
express. Mm.
I love Pineapple Express. It's
Yes.
definitely time. But shout out to Cheech and Chong. They're still here. And to be that far in the game and still be here, that's what's up. All right, Dina, that's it. That's all we got for today. That was my 7 grams. Thank you for spending your Friday with me and sharing your story. Any last words before we hop off?
Thank you for having me. Thank you for everything that you do. I just love this industry and the people that I meet. And yeah, I just appreciate our relationship. So thank you.
Likewise. All right, girl. You have a great Friday. I'm going to let everybody know where they can find you in our description. And for all of you who are watching, make sure that you follow Dina. If you have any questions or there was something that you resonated with, please make sure you drop those in the comments. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and share. Peace.